Hey guys, we are back with another Godzilla video on 5-9 Gaming here, and I am joined by Varied Geek and Taistra Daisetsu. The past two videos we talked about the Showa era and then the Heisei era, and in this one we're going to be talking about the third era in Toho's Godzilla franchise, the Millennium era. Now, the Millennium era is sort of tied to the end of the Toho sort of kaiju universe for over in Japan. We've seen the MonsterVerse sort of take over in the US to expand upon the Godzilla franchise. And then, more recently we've seen Japan sort of take their Godzilla universe to a more animated universe over there. But in this video, we're going to be talking about all the movies that came out sort of around the turning of the millennium, which is why they call it the Millennium series. So from around 1999 all the way up to around 2004/2005. So not really as big of an era as the other ones. Like, I mean, the Showa era was like almost 30 years long or something like that. The Heisei era was like 15 years or something, 12 to 15 years long. This one's like 5 to 6 years long, so a lot shorter. But there's some interesting things we could be talking about in this video. In terms of what this era did for the franchise, what do you guys want to talk about first?
Well, before we talk about the Millennium era, we have to talk about Roland Emmerich's 98 American Godzilla movie.
That's a lot of fish.
I was about to say too, like, this is kind of the era where they first introduced it was the first American produced Godzilla.
Yeah, it was like in 1998, like right before Godzilla 2000.
Swing and a miss.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with my thoughts on it. I kind of like warmed up to it over time. Like, I don't like the movie. It's okay. It's like, if you just kind of separate the whole Godzilla name from it, I think it's like an okay monster flick. Like, the effects, at least for the time, were pretty good, I guess. I mean, he even had a Puff Daddy music video with Godzilla, so I mean, it is what it is. But
that's how you know you peaked.
Yeah.
As a monster is when you get Puff Daddy to sponsor you.
But overall, like, it wasn't bad. It was just my thing was, it was just more so I feel like they really try to make a like Jurassic Park ripoff of like the raptor versions of Godzilla. It's like really like whatever.
Right.
Yeah, and it's funny because I believe the only reason why this Millennium era even came to be was in direct response to how bad the American 1998 Godzilla movie was. Because, I mean, you're kind of taking like the product of a country's history and culture, and you're trying to spin it in your own way, and it just didn't work, right? And so it's like, I don't know. I'm not going to go as far as to say that Toho was offended by this, but they were just like, "You think that's cool? Watch this," and they just like completely destroyed it with all the movies they came out with in the Millennium era. So, in a way, we can thank this movie for existing, because without this movie, who knows if we ever would have gotten this whole era in anyway, right? To begin with. So,
that is true. Yeah.
As a kid, I loved the movie, and as I stated a little bit ago, we were talking about how this had the Taco Bell ad, so not only did they have Puff Daddy behind him, but Taco Bell.
I think I need a bigger box.
Yeah.
So I was hooked. But no, as a kid, I loved the movie, but as time went on, obviously, you look at it and compare it to the old ones, and it's like, man, what happened? So I'm glad that it is out, because it's one of those meme movies when it comes to Godzilla, especially with later on in the Millennium era. But man, it's a trip, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the 1998 movie too was that it ends on a very obvious cliffhanger. Like, they show like an egg of another Godzilla that's about to hatch, or something like that. And it's like, okay, there's clearly plans to make either one or even two more movies after this. And as we know, that never happened. So clearly the reception was very bad. And it looks like Toho just ended up taking over from there, because they saw this and they're like, all right, well, we can do a lot better than this. And then they made their own movie, Godzilla 2000. That's sort of where the Millennium era kicks off for Toho. So what do you guys think about that movie, Godzilla 2000? Sort of like the, I guess, first Godzilla movie that's part of the Toho the Toho brand name since Godzilla vs. Destroyer.
I guess I'll jump back really quick because the weirdest thing about, like you said, like because of how badly received the 98 American one was, they basically didn't make the Millennium Era because of it. But the weirdest thing to me is not that, but the fact that the cliffhanger, it was picked up on. It was picked up by the animated series, and it starts off right where the movie leaves off. But the animated series is like exactly what you wanted from from the American movie. Godzilla, the baby Godzilla grows up, it has atomic breath, it fights a bunch of different monsters. All the characters in the series are the same characters in the movie, but just like infinitely better. And it's such a weird thing to watch right after that movie because you're like, where the hell was this when the movie was coming out? Like, he had actual atomic breath and everything. It was so weird. And he didn't even die by missiles or nothing.
Godzilla!
It was so weird, but yeah, Godzilla 2000 was actually the first movie, I think, aside from King Kong vs. Godzilla, was one of the first American movies like I saw like that they actually brought to the U.S. Like, it wasn't just like, because especially at the time they didn't never brought those like movies over except maybe a couple years later on TV or VHS or whatever. It was actually like in theaters for the first time, and I really liked it.
I think it's funny too, because I think the reason why that was they even thought it would be popular enough to bring over here in theaters was probably, again, because of the 1998 one.
For sure.
It was so close in proximity to when that 1998 movie came out. People probably thought this was a sequel.
I think so. Yeah. I think there was some confusion.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, if they can get people in the seats in the theaters, it's fine. But I think what actually ended up happening was, I think this was the final Godzilla movie to come out in movie theaters in the U.S.
Yeah.
Until the MonsterVerse movies came out.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, honestly, like I feel bad because I got to come back and rewatch these because a lot of these I have completely forgotten, or it's a blur. But I can honestly say that when it comes to the design of the monsters in general, like they still improved. That's for sure. Like, I like Godzilla's design during this era compared to last era, even though the last era was really good. But yeah, ultimately for me, I feel bad because I need to go back and rewatch these to kind of get a refresher.
Yeah. For me, the Godzilla 2000 movie, like, it was really weird because it sort of brings in like the whole alien thing to the franchise. I mean, there were aliens that existed in the Showa era with mechagodzilla and all that, but to me, this sort of feels like the first step that they've taken to sort of implement more, I guess, sci-fi aspects. Like, not as if this whole franchise isn't sci-fi to begin with, but more, I guess, modern and contemporary sci-fi elements to the franchise with aliens and all that stuff, because like literally the enemy of this movie is a giant UFO.
Yeah, it looks like a turd for half of it because this is brown.
I do remember that a little bit. But,
yeah, so that's literally what Orga is. Like, he's the UFO, and then like at the end of the movie he transforms into Orga, and it's sort of like a very weird and strange plot they have going on for this movie. But it's an interesting sort of turn, and I feel like it's a good representation of what the Millennium series or the Millennium era is, because it's more so them experimenting with weird stuff, that it's not just, oh, there's a giant T-Rex like monster, there's a giant, monster with, typical things that you'd see in another monster. It's not like Monster versus Monster. It's more of like weird thing versus Godzilla, right?
Yeah, it's like it's more like science mess up. It's always like something scientific that went wrong versus Godzilla.
Yeah, because we also see the return of mechagodzilla in this era again. Like, there's a lot of technology, I guess, oriented stuff going on in this series, which I guess is representative of the times as well, because of the fact that this is when, we started seeing cell phones and stuff like that. So just sort of they try to sort of implement more technology into the Millennium era to make it seem more futuristic, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I agree with you. Like, it really was just, because the one thing you'll notice as we go along is just this era, I think, is like summed up in one word. It's just inconsistent. There's not much continuity except for maybe one movie having a 2-movie series back to back. But you'll see, like, the movie after this is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and that has nothing, even though it has the exact same design of Godzilla from the last one, it has nothing to do with the last movie.
Yeah. And this sort of, the Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla movie is sort of just like a throwback to the old, you know, Godzilla versus X, Godzilla versus Y. It's more so the typical storyline you would see of just like a monster versus monster movie, which is harping back to the original formula of what made this franchise so popular to begin with. Again, this all goes back to Godzilla vs. Kong from, what is it, like 1963 or whatever?
Yeah.
So even in 2000 plus, that same formula is working for Toho. So that's, you know, something to keep in mind here.
And they even shot, the funny thing about that movie specifically is, like, they wanted to get rid of Mechagodzilla and Godzilla. They're like, oh crap, we made Mechagodzilla and that thing, or like it was like a fly that escaped one of their dimensional portals or something. And then it was like, oh damn, we messed up. So let's just shoot a black. They made a black hole weapon in space, and they're like, let's get rid of both of them. And then they shot it after Godzilla killed Mechagodzilla, and then Godzilla shot his beam at the black hole. And they're like, oh, he's dead. And then there's a post-credit scene and you hear his roar. So he just tanked the black hole or whatever. So,
he has ascended.
Like, it was just, I mean, Godzilla's feats are just, when you go down to the science of it, it's just actually pretty, like, funny.
Yeah.
But looking at some of the other movies we have here, I mean, we have that one. We have another Mothra and King Ghidorah triple team-up movie. I have to have one of those every era somehow. I think that's probably one of the more well-received movies of this era, the Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah All-Out Attack movie.
I agree, yeah. It's probably my favorite one for sure. Because the whole concept of it, which I feel like was very smart of them, was just to bring back Mothra and King Ghidorah, and shout out to Baragon, who didn't even make it into the title, but whatever.
Yeah.
But
he's just kind of on the sideline.
It's funny too, because he's like one of them, because those three are the main three defenders of like Japanese like folklore or whatever. So they're actually from Earth and protect Earth. So King Ghidorah isn't a bad monster in this movie, actually. It's a defender. The bad one was Godzilla. Because in this movie, he comes back and I think it was stated, he's like around the same size as the original Godzilla, like he's smaller. And it was stated that he was possessed by the souls of all the Japanese soldiers from World War II to like give vengeance upon them, which is why his eyes are like Broly, just whited out.
Yeah,
so
that's what I was gonna say, is like that was probably the cooler design, but
yeah,
it's a scary Godzilla, that's for sure.
So that was why I think that movie was like very well received, because I think the story was good on its own, but also like the fact that it flipped and it made King Ghidorah like an actual good monster.
Yeah, and then moving on, I think we have Godzilla versus another Mechagodzilla.
Yeah. Against Mechagodzilla is different.
Sorry, so. They removed the word versus for against. Okay, cool. Which is funny because I think that movie actually does tie into the next one, which is Tokyo SOS. I think it's sort of like direct sequel to that one. Yeah,
and those two are that's what I was mentioning before. Like those two are the only two that have like actual like mini continuity. Like their sequels are connected to each other.
Yeah, and then I mean it's funny because both of those movies are pretty much just Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, right?
Yeah, because I mean we all know how Mothra fares like in all of them, but
hey, don't be dissing Mothra.
I mean, true, but at least in the Heisei, they gave her like beams to do. But,
very true. Mothra's just there to die for Godzilla. That's basically what it ultimately boils down to.
Pretty much, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the only thing noteworthy for me from those two movies were that it's pretty much just Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla the show. Like, yeah, Mechagodzilla's design was pretty cool. I think they call it Kiryu or something. Like, it was very cool.
Yeah,
I liked
Kiryu,
it. Yeah, Kiryu, yeah.
A mechanical dragon, literally what that means.
That's so sick. But I really like the design for this mechagodzilla.
And then finally, we in the Millennium series, the final movie is Final Wars, which is appropriate for the final installment of this franchise and in the Millennium era. What do you think about this movie? Because there's a lot of mixed opinions about this one.
Okay, you could go first, Tystra. I feel like.
Okay. So, I liked it, but I also loved the fact that it returned two meme monsters, in my opinion. You get the return of King Caesar in this movie. Which
that is true.
When I was watching it, I didn't expect it, and then when I saw him, I was like, "Oh, that's King Caesar!" and started freaking out. And I think, if I remember correctly, he gets disposed of rather quickly in the movie.
Oh,
so it's just a meme of itself.
No.
And go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I can keep going. It's funny.
It's a good movie for the lulz. And then what's absolutely hilarious, and I didn't expect it when I watched it, was that you actually get to see Zilla from the 1998 Godzilla movie in that movie, and he just gets wiped. Like there's no comparison. Godzilla just absolutely destroys him.
Godzilla, huh? Okay, let me see what you're made of.
But I thought the overall concept of the movie was good. Personally, it's, in my opinion, you know, from what I remember, the most memorable. I think it's because that was the most recent one I watched, and you see a lot of good, you know, monsters come back. Like you see Rodan, Angrius. You know, you see Gigan come back, which all hail Gigan. And then ultimately you see their kind of generational or era, in this case, defining monster baddie, which was the Monster X.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I felt kind of indifferent to it. It didn't have the impact that you know, Destroya had. And it's hard to compete with Destroya, but you would think that it would have something close to that, and it didn't come close, in my opinion.
I think, to piggyback off of that, I think, well, why I was laughing is because Final Wars is the most, like, crazy Godzilla movie I have probably ever seen. Like, you have mutant, like, kung fu action when the monsters aren't on screen. So you got that. Then you got the aliens showing up that, like, are controlling every monster. And apparently the mutants have in common thing with the aliens. So then the guy has like superpowers, like he stopped like laser bullets with his hand, like telepathically or some shit. and then Godzilla in this movie is probably the most, like, I think this is like the definition of God in his name, because every monster that you were like, oh man, he fought Gigan, man, he bled a lot in the old movie and he had to like team up with someone. He wakes up from his slumber, like the first monster he fights is Gigan, and just one-shots him with his beam and blows his head up. Like,
yeah, it was unfortunate.
And the rest of the movie is literally just him going like city to city, like he mentioned with Zilla, and literally one-shotting every monster. He fought Anguirus, Rodan, and King Caesar all at once at Mount Fuji and beat all three of them with no problem. And even when King Caesar did a team-up attack of like soccer kicking Anguirus in ball form, that didn't work. Like, it was like Godzilla is on a whole. He even shot a meteor that was destined to destroy the planet, and he blew it up before it hit.
Well, didn't the way he like ultimately defeated Monster X was he just literally threw him into space?
Yeah, he literally he gets a power up. he gets a power up, and mind you, this is like the biggest version. It's because it turns into King Ghidorah, like their version of it, and it's like it has like 4 legs, so it's like actually way bigger. And he slams it twice, like from the tails, and then he like launches it all the way into space for like just physical strength. And then he starts off with his beat. He does like a twirl, like I gotta censor myself. But he does a twirl and he starts his beam from blue, and then he turns it around and it turns red, and then he launches it into space, and then he blows it up. And it's like, this movie's nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hilarious front to back, and that's why I love it. It's just the only thing was obviously the impact of Monster X wasn't entirely like fantastic to me, but I feel like they obviously when they were making this movie, I feel like they didn't take it too seriously, which was absolutely hilarious to me. It was 5 out of 5. I don't care what anybody says.
It actually sucks though, because that movie I think was their biggest bomb though, because
yeah.
Like overall, even though it's a very fun movie and crazy, it definitely was not a good movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No. Storyline didn't make much sense. The acting was kind of weird. It was just funny to see Godzilla just one-shotting everything and taking care of the meme monsters like they weren't anything.
Yeah, including Zilla.
Yeah, including especially Zilla.
Wasn't there like a American like Mario looking dude? He was like an MMA fighter that was like leading everyone.
The world is ruined, and the war is already lost. Now it's a matter of pride. It's whether we die hiding or die fighting.
He was talking in English the whole time. Like you can watch the Japanese dub or the English one.
Yeah.
And he's just talking in English, and he's like, "Go Tango!" Like he's very mustachio, like buff man. Like that movie's man, hilarious.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all we have for the Millennium era, because again, there's only I think like 6 movies that are a part of this, and it's only like 5 to 6 years long. After the Millennium era ended, the Toho sort of Godzilla universe didn't really update their installments in this franchise until Shin Godzilla in 2016, which is something that we'll talk about in the next video. So this has been 5-9 Gaming. I'm Gorash, joined by a Varied Geek and Taistra Daisetsu. If you guys like these sorts of videos, let us know down below what you think about what we discussed, as well as what your favorite movies are in the Millennium series, as well as what your favorite monsters were that were introduced in this era as well. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to us for more info as we get sort of closer and closer and closer to Godzilla vs. Kong, and we'll see you all in the next one.
Peace.
Later, guys.